Hi, my name is Noah and welcome to Architecture in Sci-Fi Film. Today I want to take a look at Rogue One. The Star Wars movies are well known for their visuals and state-of-the-art special effects. Each movie in the saga takes us to fantastic worlds, from the hot desert of Tatooine to the dense jungle of Dagobah, and from the isolated cloud city on Bespin to the galactic metropolis on Coruscant. With so much going for them, there's no question why these movies also appeal to architects and designers. I found myself glaring at Naboo each time it was on screen, not to mention avidly searching for images of Coruscant or occasionally discussing the layout of the Jedi Temple with my friends. But how much of this translates into the story? Or better yet, how is architecture used in storytelling? But before going any further, a spoiler alert is in order since elements of the story are essential to answering this question. Rogue One is the latest installment of the franchise, and in true Star Wars fashion, we are given various locations, each with its own style while also vaguely familiar. Like the previous movies in the saga, each location echoes our own world. In an interview, the chief artist for Star Wars Episode 1, Doug Chang, stated, "I found that you should avoid making things up without anchoring them to a strong foundation based in world history. These foundations can also be seen in Rogue One, especially on Jeddah, where inspiration was drawn from the Middle East. Some scenes were actually filmed on location in Jordan. Other filming locations include Iceland and the Maldives, but we'll come to that later. The story takes place between the prequels and the original trilogy, and we are reminded of that by a closer look at the Rebel base on Yavin 4. In the first movie, we are given a distant shot over the jungle and a close-up of the entrance. Now we have a more detailed look at the central building and the other structures inspired by Mayan temples. This scene is faithful to the original, barely adding anything new. This is done to ensure visual continuity and to establish an emotional connection with Episode 4, A New Hope, connection that will be rewarded by the ending of the movie. In the beginning of the film, we see the moisture farm on planet Lahmo, actually filmed on the shores of Iceland. The farm looks a lot like the one from the desert planet Tatooine. Much of it is built underground, with evaporators visible on the surface. This is of course another callback to the original trilogy. The main difference here is that it doesn't have an open courtyard below ground level, and it is mostly inside the large rock formation. This can be justified by climate and terrain, although an argument can be made about the use of moisture evaporators in such a humid place. Nonetheless, the reference to the beginning of Luke Skywalker's journey is here to mirror the tragic death of the parents. Other than that, there's not much architecture to talk about. The second location is the Ring of Kafran, where we see a trading outpost on two asteroids connected by buildings. This is an interesting and quite unique design. Now the physics of it might be debatable. How gravity works in such a place, or how come it is similar to that of a planet? How come there is an atmosphere since there is no dome and no apparent protection from the void of space? Although the asteroids look natural, this might be an all-engineered structure with engines that provide movement and avoid the collision with other rocks that we see floating around. We might never know, but it sure looks cool from the distance for the few seconds it is on screen. On a closer look though, the buildings are pretty generic skyscrapers, and on the street level we only have a glimpse of some sort of containers. Another location is on the rocky planet Idu, the Imperial Kyber refinery. The facility is set inside a mountain, and although most of it is hidden, with only a landing platform stretching outside the cliff and several capsule-looking elements on the sides, the design is quite modern, a way of telling the audience, here is our most advanced research taking place. The capsules have small slits, presumably for light, but perhaps also for secrecy reasons. The environment is not friendly, so building inside the mountain makes a lot of sense, especially given the sensitive nature of the research. After the events on Idu, we are introduced to Darth Vader's fortress, a medieval-looking defensive building on top of a lava river on the edge of a cliff. The reason for the lava flowing through the building is not clear. It may be a power generator, or maybe the heat is tapped for another purpose, but the image of it is commanding. It is there to remind us of the battle between Anakin and Obi-Wan on the planet Mustafar, the moment Darth Vader is truly born. The fortress looks a lot like Mordor from The Lord of the Rings, so a bit of creativity regarding the tower design might have served the story better to distance it from this association. All in all, the scene is powerful enough to set the mood before being introduced to the iconic villain once again. In the entire movie and its galactic voyage, two locations are treated with more screen time: the cold desert planet Jeddah and the tropical paradise Scarif. On Jeddah, among several ruins, we see the fortified temple city up on a rock plateau. The old Jedi temple dominates the densely packed town with its narrow streets, domed buildings, arched passages and colonnades, most of them decorated with classical elements. Everything seems built with the same materials, stone and clay. This is said to clearly evoke the age of this place, its rich history and thus its importance, making its destruction all the more painful. On the way to Saw Gerrera's rebel hideout, also on Jeddah, we see several structures similar in shape and size to Jabba the Hutt's fortress on Tatooine. At first I thought this might be just a coincidence, an oversight in design, since there are no similarities plot-wise. But seeing so many references throughout the movie, I consider this to be yet another nod to the original trilogy, although the only connection I can think of is the site, a rocky desert. The hideout itself is partially carved in a large stone wall, design clearly influenced by the Petra temple in Jordan. At first I wondered how come the Empire that was actively searching for Saw Gerrera and his rebels didn't find them in such an obvious place. But after seeing so many ruins all over the place, this made more sense to me. It was just one of the many isolated carved rocks scattered throughout the desert. The choice of setting this part of the story in a world so similar to the Middle East and actually filming in Jordan, the birthplace of Christianity, made me think of the recent history of turmoil there, the constant armed conflicts that take place in the region, and the fact that in the movie we root with the rebels and their fight with the Empire. Now, much can be said about these parallels and also about the similar religious aspects of the Jedi Order and Christianity, but that is a different discussion for another time. Returning to architecture and this story, the last act of the movie takes us to the planet Scarif, a tropical paradise where the main building of the security complex looks like a combination between Burj Khalifa and the brutalist architecture of the 70s with a dash of industrial elements. In most cases, in this movie but also throughout the saga, the buildings are contextualized, creating a natural extension of the environment and looking like they belong there, but not this time. This last part of the story, filmed in the Maldives, shows us a building in strong contrast with its surroundings. A stern, grey, mostly opaque, massive, tall object dominates a small archipelago. It makes sense to draw inspiration from brutalist architecture when designing a facility of the Empire, since this style is usually associated with communist buildings of Eastern Europe or in Russia, although the term itself comes from the French béton brut, raw concrete. Here the environment is refreshing, warm and welcoming, while the structure is intrusive and unpleasant. There's nothing comfortable about this association, and it is not meant to. The tension between building and context comes in support of the narration. The stakes are high. Rebels versus Empire, a small group of people versus an army, a battle for the future of the galaxy. This last location is a metaphor for the way the Empire took hold of the Republic, transforming a peaceful, somewhat idyllic assembly of worlds into a totalitarian regime that dominates through brute force, large numbers, and fear. To sum this up, we have been given 7 different built locations, a moisture farm and a rebel base with design elements already established in this universe, a trading outpost in space and a fortress on a lava river, both shown briefly. Because of the short screen time, these buildings don't have a lot of thought put into their designs. If on a second look their designs might be questionable, their presence serves a simple purpose: to provide a quick background and set the mood for the scene. A research facility with just a little more screen time. The building itself has only a few visible elements, but what we see makes sense with its function and setting. An old settlement, heavily inspired from real holy cities like Jerusalem or Mecca, in order to establish a deeper relation with the audience on an emotional level, because the story resembles real-life events. A security complex with an important data archive. Its design works perfectly for the story. A modern-day fortress with a clear purpose, being a vault. It shows no interest in its appearance or its environment. Its only concern is functionality. The buildings designed for this movie are faithful to the tradition established by the saga. They feel like they belong in this universe with just enough new elements to feel fresh, but also several callbacks to connect us with previous stories. This is a good lesson in how architectural design in sci-fi movies helps the story. The mental connection that we make between the events on Jeddah with the Middle East as a place of social unrest, or the placement of the security complex in dissonance with its surroundings. These are visual cues that give something extra to the audience, thus come to support the narration. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it. I am currently working on making more videos such as this, so if you have any suggestions of movies you want me to discuss, feel free to leave a comment and maybe subscribe.